We've had a lot of new subscribers here on the Cowboys Report, and firstly, I want to thank all of you who are subscribed. But what you might not realize is you could be missing out on a video almost every day that we do here on the Cowboys Report if your notifications are not set to all. And only 20% of you guys actually have it set up that way. When you first subscribe, YouTube defaults you to personalized instead of all, which means you won't get a push every time there's a new video here on the Cowboys Report. So go change that right now if you want a free video sent right to your phone every single day from us here at the Cowboys Report. Click that notification bell, change it from personalized to all. Tom Downey here for the Cowboys Report. Mike McCarthy had his postseason press conference today with various media members for Dallas, and there were a couple takeaways I wanted to get to beyond the whole acknowledging penalties are a problem and standing by the decision to do the quarterback draw on the final play of the game. There were some questions asked of McCarthy about calling plays if Kellen Moore gets a head coaching job, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I want to focus on what McCarthy said when he was asked about his future as the Cowboys head coach, if he had been told he was going to be back as Cowboys head coach. McCarthy's answer was rather similar in the end to what Stephen Jones has said recently, that there were confidence and positive conversations, but it's still not the full-fledged, I am the head coach, Mike is the head coach. It was confidence, positive conversations. I thought Mark Lane summed up that entire kind of rambling answer from McCarthy pretty well. Had a chance to talk to Jerry Jones after the game and Monday. Had a positive conversation. Says he's focused on the exit interviews right now. All of that sounds to me like the expectation is that Mike McCarthy is the head coach come 2021 for the Dallas Cowboys. But from Steven's answer and Mike's answer, it's still not quite the 100% firm, I'm locked and loaded, I'm your guy. There hasn't been the yes or the no answer. It's still in that gray area, closer to the yes side, but still in the gray. At the same time, you wouldn't let Mike McCarthy, I don't think there's any way Jerry would do that, of letting Mike McCarthy go up to the media amid the uncertainty around his job if Jerry wasn't planning on having Mike McCarthy back. So I think the answer here is this. He's most likely back, almost assuredly back, as the Dallas Cowboys head coach. But we're not putting the breaking McCarthy will stay as head coach video out because we haven't gotten that yet. So what is the percent chance that you think the Cowboys and Jerry Jones decide to surprise everybody and end up dumping Mike McCarthy? This is the pinned comment on today's video. So if the ad break comes here on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there and drop the percent chance you think McCarthy's gone. I think you're at maybe 5%. I'll go full Jim Carrey. So you're telling me there's a chance. I think we're in a similar chance range right here. But this is kind of like the Jim Harbaugh Michigan stuff. Like, it could be easily answered if Harbaugh comes out and says, I'm back. If McCarthy says, I'm the guy. Jerry says, Mike's the guy. That hasn't quite been said, even with other hints and moves, like doing the press conference today, that he should be back. So I think he's back. I think he's the head coach next year. Just can't say quite 100% at this point. Now, McCarthy was also asked about play calling for the Dallas Cowboys. And, hey, if Kellen Moore leaves as head coach, who's next man up? Would you call the plays? First off, Mike didn't answer the question. And then he finally had another question asked about it, and he did answer and said he's not going to call the plays. He used the line of whoever installs it calls it, which is not the head coach's responsibility. Long story short, McCarthy doesn't appear to want to call the plays for the Dallas Cowboys, and he made comments about wanting it to be the same offense, which sounds to me like our plan A is bring back Kellen Moore. If he does get a head coaching job, that sounds like internal promotion to me, not going outside the organization and drastically adjusting the offense for what potentially could be 1 year. That means I think there are 3 in-house replacements who make sense, who jump out to me as notable names. Doug Nussmeier, the quarterback's coach, who has a history of play calling at the collegiate level. Ben McAdoo, interviewing for the Panthers offensive coordinator job, a long-time Mike McCarthy borderline protege and has play calling experience as well. And I'll briefly mention Joe Philbin. He's barely called plays, so I'd be a bit surprised if he ended up being a real option. It's probably one of the three names then, right here. Doug Nussmeier, keep Kellen Moore, or Ben McAdoo. So I'm very curious how you guys vote. If you had to pick one, no coward's way out voting in somebody else. If you had to pick one as your play caller, who would it be? DN for Doug Nussmeier, KM for Kellen Moore, or BM for Ben McAdoo. Today's show is powered by our sportsbook partner, BetUS, just like my spending money is powered by BetUS because I'm in the black this year. And if you want BetUS to hook you up with a 125% deposit bonus when you put down $100, it's actually very simple. Use promo code Cowboys125 at chatsports.com/bet. Put down at least $100. They'll give you an extra 125% on top of whatever you put on, and then you can bet on the playoffs. And I think there are some fun games we're going to have this weekend. My stone cold lock of the week, not going to happen most likely then. I like the Bucks -3 against the Rams because how can I bet against Tom Brady in the playoffs against Matthew Stafford? Just can't do it. If you want to fade me or follow my picks or bet on all kinds of sports, do it with BetUS. Chatsports.com/bet. Promo code Cowboys125. News item now around the Dallas Cowboys. Free and I has happened. Not what we meant. That's not what I meant by free and I. He is gone. He has signed with the New York Jets. Now, he became a free agent technically after finishing the year on the practice squad for the Dallas Cowboys. And I believe it's a futures deal here. Picked the Jets over Dallas. And I'll make note, by the way, if you follow Bradlee Anae on Instagram, you might have had the inkling. He posted yesterday his realtor had a house up for immediate lease, and I think that was a nice house in the end. Only played 56 defensive snaps in his time with the Dallas Cowboys. Like many of you, I was a big Bradlee Anae fan coming out of Utah. Never quite got the full-fledged opportunity due to not being the best special teamer, other guys that earning the role over him, or at least from the coaching staff's perspective, earning the role over him. And now he's going to New York to hopefully get more playing time in the future. So this is then what the Cowboys' defensive end depth chart looks like entering the offseason. Randy Gregory, Dorrance Armstrong, both free agents. DeMarcus Lawrence, Chauncey Golston, Terrell Basham, the top three under contract. Of course, not including Micah Parsons, who is he's the linebacker for this team. Linebacker and edge rusher rolled into one. So some help or re-signings are going to be needed at this position in the offseason. Let's talk now about Amari Cooper here on the Cowboys Report, because there's some buzz that continues to grow around Cooper's future, and this is stuff that I labeled throughout the year and last offseason. This is a future Tom problem, because you got to make a decision now about Amari Cooper. And Bobby Belt has said he thinks Cooper is going to be gone. We've acknowledged that possibility in the past. Because that option does exist, you can look at the contract and say Amari Cooper is about to have a $22 million cap hit. It's way too much. And you don't want to pay a guy that much with years left on his deal in reality. And there's not much guaranteed money. You could cut Amari Cooper right now, save $16 million in an instant. So you've got two paths here with Amari Cooper as far as I'm concerned. And I guess option 3 is doing with his deal, which I think is kind of stupid. But you can restructure Cooper, push that money into the future when the salary cap goes up, when you're not as focused on the meantime, because it's always a good thing to do, keep the cap hit slow and then worry about it later, or move on from him. And I think there is some issues within the organization as it relates to Amari Cooper. But what's clear regardless is that he wasn't as good this year. Now, look, you had CeeDee Lamb, you got other players involved. I get all that. Cooper's stats, even though, to be fair, you don't have to throw it as much because you were a better football team this year, they went down. You cannot be paying, and in the offseason, I'm okay talking more about the money and how you adjust it. You cannot be paying $22 million for under 1,000 yards. That's unacceptable. Now, a lot of that I'm putting on the play calling. I think it's ridiculous, and we'll get more in depth on it with what Troy Aikman had to say. The usage of your superstar players was not nearly good enough. But even the 2020 numbers, it's not quite worth the $22 million. So either restructure, make the number more affordable, and you feel fine about it and get him more involved, or move on in some capacity. I don't want to move on, but I want to hear from you guys first and foremost. What would you do with Amari Cooper? Type in K for keep, C for cut, or type T for trade him. I would keep Amari Cooper. I think the offense is better when he is involved. Now, as I alluded to, there are some issues that I think have to be worked out for the Dallas Cowboys. They've got to figure out what went wrong for him. But think about it this way. If you don't keep Amari Cooper, yes, you would have more money to play with in free agency. But as it sits at the current moment, you would have CeeDee Lamb as your wide receiver 1, Simi Fehoko and his 0 snaps as wide receiver 2. Receiver suddenly, if you cut Amari or trade him, jumps to the top of your needs list yet again because your next top backups, Gallup, Wilson, Malik Turner, and Noah Brown, are all free agents. I do think there are some issues to be worked out between Amari Cooper and the Dallas Cowboys. I think there was frustration from Cooper's end with how he was being used. I think that might have upset some of the coaching staff, front office members as well. I think the production was an issue. And if we're being honest here, the vaccination status was an issue as well because it cost him games. Those things have to be figured out. And I think the Cowboys not restructuring Cooper's deal last year when they could have kept this door open. They wanted to have the option. Now they have to make a decision. In the end, though, I don't want to get worse. I think you should utilize Cooper. I think Cooper is the best sluggo, the slant and go route runner in the NFL. And it was not used nearly enough these past couple years. Utilize him as a number 1 receiver. What you're paying him for, get him the ball like he is one. Speaking of getting the ball to your playmakers, Troy Aikman went off on the Cowboys' usage of CeeDee Lamb in this game. There was a lot of things that Aikman said. I'll boil down the gist of it. Maybe you saw the quote out there. He ripped the play calling and the way they used CeeDee Lamb of not, in the end, getting the ball into the hands of your top playmakers. Now, yes, CeeDee Lamb had a big play taken away by one of the myriad of penalties in that game. In total, for Lamb against San Francisco, the former first-round pick, the guy we all love, can make big plays for you, is one of your most explosive playmakers. 2 touches. Can't have it. It's just not okay. In the end, that is a failure of your coaching staff, namely Kellen Moore and the supporting cast as well. You've got a bunch of plays in your playbook. I get that. Maybe you got to condense it down a little bit if there's too much going on in there. But if the offense can't design the plays to get the ball to your best playmakers, that's an abject failure. And that's on the coaching staff for designing the plays and the reads. If Kellen Moore does return this year, it's simple. It has to be better. Dalton Schultz played great. I get that. I don't think in the most important game of the year, Cedric Wilson and Dalton Schultz should be near the top of your targets list. That means you got outcoached by the opposing team. Injury news now. We'll kind of go more rapid fire on this stuff. Some minor housekeeping notes. McCarthy said that Chauncey Golston and Brandon Smith will get ankle surgery. Golston, Brandon Smith, by the way, is the practice squad wide receiver. Golston stayed in the rotation down the stretch into the postseason as well. That sounds to me like this is a cleanup procedure in the end for Golston. I got no concerns about him being good to go well in time for the preseason and offseason. Other notes here, there is no surgery planned for Ezekiel Elliott after he suffered the partially torn PCL. He'll just rest and rehab and hopefully looks more like early season Zeke before the injury took away whatever explosiveness he had left. One last note, there has been no surgery yet for Michael Gallup. That's actually not that unusual. That injury is barely 2 weeks old, and that's still on the early end of the typical timeline for an ACL procedure. You got to let the swelling go down, and you sometimes see players get some pre-rehab done to help keep that swelling down afterwards. So nothing shocking there. It's just the unfortunate timing of the injury, I think, will have an impact on Gallup's offseason value.